We'll call the meeting, the CPOC meeting, to order. Do we have any public speakers? We generally don't. No public speakers. Do we have any? Let's do the approval of the minutes from the May 21st meeting. Any questions, comments, changes? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Hillary, do we have any changes to the work plan?
The only change to the work plan is we had initially planned to do a presentation on all electronic tolling, which has been put off until early 13 to give the pilot time to be implemented.
Okay. And also legislation in Albany, which would be helpful as well. Okay. So we have a couple of items on the committee meeting. Maybe the first CPOC I've been to that doesn't talk about muck houses, so I appreciate it. Jim, no, it has nothing to do with Linda, nor Hillary. Somebody else, though. So I'll turn it over to Jim Farrar and Joe Keene to talk about the work on the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge.
Okay, with this presentation, we'd like to give you an idea of what we plan to do for not only state of good repair for the Verrazano Bridge, but to change the regional mobility with the implementation of a bus lane in conjunction with this project. So, Joe, if you can take it away.
Sure. Good afternoon. This presentation is a risk assessment presentation on one of the larger projects in our capital program, which is a project called VN80, which is a redecking, replacement of the decks on the upper level of the suspended spans of the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge. The project is currently in procurement, and we will be actually taking bids very shortly. This presentation, like other risk assessment presentations, will present the results of a quantitative risk assessment where we looked at the cost and schedule risks of implementing this major project. But first off, we want to present an overview of the project and how it fits into the overall capital plan for the Verrazano Bridge and how it advances several capital program goals. As part of the presentation, we'll discuss mitigations of project risk that were considered and assimilated into the project as it developed, and then we will present the results of the formal risk assessment and the post-risk assessment mitigations that were implemented to further reduce project risk. This first slide illustrates the area in question. To the left on the Staten Island side, the project highlighted in blue is currently underway. It's a project to modernize and reconfigure the eastbound toll plaza and basically improve the whole interchange with the Staten Island Expressway and the Verrazano toll plaza. And as you'll see later, this project is somewhat interrelated to the project we're going to discuss today. Highlighted in green is a project that was done as an enabling project for this current project, which was a utility relocation project completed in 2010, which, as we will discuss, has reduced some of the risks associated with the redecking project itself. On the top left, there's a project listed, which was actually conducted at Lehigh University. It was an off-site, full-scale lab prototype of the deck, and we have the term here orthotropic deck, so I probably should start off by defining an orthotropic deck is a deck that's made of steel plates that are reinforced in the longitudinal direction, usually by welding other plates or bolting other plates or ribs to the underside of that steel plate. It's an incredibly strong structural form in that configuration, and that's the kind of deck that we're installing here on the Verrazano Bridge. So between 08 and 12, we did a lot of off-site prototype testing of this design to validate that it would work and to work out some constructability issues. And also in
Could you just expand the orthotropic, how it's constructed, the deck itself?
The deck is a steel plate. Usually, in this case, it's about a 5/8 inch thick steel plate, and underneath the deck there are sort of like a corrugated arrangement underneath.
Think about it as a weave like this, with metal going in every which direction, so that if one point fails, the other point can stay, and that's...
Okay.
What's the word that's opposite of orthotropic? There is a...
Isotropic. So the project we will discuss is the project shown in red on the top, and that basically will result in replacement of the upper level deck on the suspended spans of the bridge, and then the other project listed there, new bus HOV ramp, is what Jim alluded to in the introduction. This project is a complementary project to the project we're going to discuss today, and with that project being implemented, we will in fact realize the ability to have a full bus HOV connection from the Staten Island side right through the toll plaza onto the upper level, and connecting and touching down to where the state is currently reconstructing the state DOT, that is reconstructing the reversible bus HOV lane on the Gowanus Expressway. So that basically is the context of the project we're going to discuss today. The next slide. So,
ask you one question. When you say risk assessment, are you assessing it from the standpoint of cost and price in any form, or are you assessing it in terms of the risk attendant to the building, to the structure, to the bridge?
No, this is a cost and schedule risk assessment.
Okay.
Yeah. So this slide kind of repeats some of what I discussed. The decision to replace the upper level decks was made in 2004. We had evaluated various rehabilitation options and looked at a lot of things, but basically these decks are approaching 50 years of service, heavy-duty service with heavy truck traffic and heavy traffic. So we made the decision back in 2004 to replace the decks. Then, as we discussed, we went through a series of steps to do our due diligence with implementing the project. Orthotropic deck prototype was conducted at Lehigh University, and that helped validate the design concept. We did an enabling project completed in 2010, which removed a lot of the utilities that would be in the way of the redecking project itself. And now, second last bullet there, we are basically at the centerpiece of the program, which is to award this upper deck replacement project, which, roughly speaking, is about a $300 million construction project, to give you an idea. And then the final piece of the puzzle, so to speak, which really caps it all and pulls it all together, so to speak, from a regional mobility point of view, is to build this new connecting ramp from this upper level that will be somewhat wider in its new form to connect to the Gowanus bus HOV lane that the state DOT is currently working on. Next slide, please.
We'll get to the pictures. You'll see it. It'll be a...
So this graphic depicts basically the regional situation along the I-278 corridor, which is the corridor that encompasses the Staten Island Expressway connecting the Verrazano Bridge and onwards on the Gowanus all the way to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. The area to the left in Staten Island, there is an existing bus HOV lane that ends right now at Slauson Avenue. That the state is currently in construction to extend that to Richmond Avenue. And on the Brooklyn side, as you know, there is currently, and there has been for a long time, a bus HOV operation on the Gowanus. However, there is an interruption in the continuity of that bus HOV lane between the Verrazano Bridge and basically up towards where the prospect is. So that area right now, the state is currently implementing a major improvement. It's called the Shore Parkway Interchange Project, and they're building out an additional lane which will facilitate a reversible bus HOV lane without an interruption on the Brooklyn side. So as you can see from that, with the improvements on both sides of the bridge, we were left with the Verrazano sort of being the missing link in the regional puzzle. So one of the considerations that we included in this capital program was, since we needed to replace the deck anyway, as from a state of good repair point of view, let's take a look and see if we could build added value into the project by creating an additional lane that would provide that continuity and would link the bus HOV improvements on both sides that our partner, the state DOT, is implementing. So that basically is what this graphic is showing.
Joe, before you leave that, is where it says to provide AM and PM uninterrupted, is that HOV, is that a bus lane in both directions at both times of day, or one direction in each time of the day?
It's one lane, but they flip the movable barrier so that it reverses to favor the peak traffic direction.
Right.
Yes. And that holds true for the Staten Island improvements also. So next slide, please. So this, we figured we'd show you the final product first, and then we can get into how we get there. So this is really, hopefully around 2017, if not sooner, this will be the final configuration off the Verrazano Bridge. This is a cross-sectional view of the bridge. You see that there are 7 lanes on the upper level compared to the current 6, and we still have the 6 lanes on the lower level. And you notice in the center where the bus is, that is a newly created bus HOV lane, which is what we've been talking about. So once all these improvements that we showed earlier are implemented, this is the new configuration off the Verrazano Bridge with an added lane which will be dedicated for bus HOV travel and will greatly facilitate express bus and HOV travel and regional mobility, we believe.
Are trucks prohibited from the lower level?
Currently, trucks are prohibited on the lower level.
Would that policy continue?
Not necessarily.
That will be evaluated as we move forward. So you can see that in the AM we will have 6 general purpose lanes going inbound or eastbound, and 1 bus HOV lane going inbound, and the reverse would be the case with the PM rush hour.
What are the difference in the size of lanes for a regular vehicle on the lower level as opposed to the 11.3 on the upper level?
Currently, the lanes on the lower level are 12-foot lanes.
Okay,
so what we were able to do on the upper level. There's right now the structural width out to out from curb to curb is 78 feet. Mm-hmm. We were able to modify the curbs and the center median to gain a few additional feet, and then what we had to do was sort of divvy up the available real estate. Right. And what we did is we provided a 12-foot wide bus HOV lane. We gave preference to the bus HOV lane being extra wide, so to speak, and that left us with about an 11-foot 3 allowance for all the remaining lanes.
So the bus HOV is 12?
Yes.
Can you explain what some of the other crossings are?
Yes, the Throgs Neck Bridge is right now we do have 12-foot lanes on the Throgs Neck Bridge. Most of our other crossings, however, are considerably less than that. For example, the Henry Hudson Bridge, even with some improvements that we're currently making, will only have 11-foot lanes. Currently, the Bronx Whitestone Bridge has one 11-foot lane and then a couple of lanes that are, I believe, 10-foot 3 and 10-foot 6. The tunnels are 10-foot 6. And so in this sort of congested metropolitan area with older facilities. I mean, 12-foot lanes are desirable, but you can't always attain them. And in this case, we believe this is a reasonable sort of compromise between some competing considerations, and that's how we sort of came up with these lane widths.
Was the purpose of making the bus HOV lane 12 for the buses?
Yes. Yes.
Are the buses wider than the trucks?
They're definitely wider than cars.
If you look, Mitch, if I can answer that, a lot of the buses that are purchased now throughout the years have widened in spots, like the mirrors.
Okay.
So in order to alleviate some of the potential designs going out for buses, which we don't have any idea what the design for buses will be in the future, it's better to plan that way. So I'm not saying there was a need currently, but there may be a need down the road when you're done designing buses.
My understanding is the federal law restricts the width of both trucks and buses. That's true. Federal law, not state law, federal law.
Oh,
Restricts the width.
I know what you're saying.
So that, now that doesn't mean you can't.
I was just going to say that. That's, I mean, based on what we know today, that's what I'm answering. In light of how we're going to move people in the future,
Right.
you never know what can transpire in build out and design of a bus, more efficient, better size, bigger size. So with that, the design for bigger is better. It's sort of like the tandem buses that we have now.
What is going to be, well, let me phrase it this way. What is the width of the lane, of the HOV lanes off of the bridge? Are they 12s?
I believe the state DOT, because they are getting federal funds, they follow FHWA guidelines, which are 12-foot lanes.
So it makes sense then to keep the width the same
Yes.
all across the front.
Yes. One other consideration that I
I understand.
I mean, we show these lanes as being striped as notionally 11'3" each, but in actuality, we could reconfigure if we wanted to have a 12-foot truck lane, and with passenger cars in the other two lanes. For example, the lane that goes to the Bell Parkway is cars only. So this is just illustrative of the kind of way we would divvy up the real estate. We haven't really made a final decision on the lane widths.
In those cases on the island where they allow trucks and where they don't, the lane widths are different just because of that reason.
Right. Exactly.
They have that flexibility.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. I mentioned at the outset that we had assimilated a lot of lessons learned and considerations into the project right from the very beginning as the project evolved, and these were things that were done that, in a sense, did and we believe have reduced risk to the project overall. These were things that happened before we did the formal risk assessment. We start off with, as we must when it comes to discussing traffic at the Verrazano, we had a previous redecking project on the lower level approaches some years ago that did generate quite a lot of traffic management issues, to say the least. And we have assimilated the lessons learned from that experience in this project. And the second bullet basically is the key there, because on the lower level, because of the geometry and the interferences caused by the columns that come from the upper to the lower level, we were not able to deploy one of the most effective traffic management techniques, which is to use a movable barrier which can reverse the peak lane direction. However, as you can tell from the upper level, there is no obstruction that would prevent that, so we're able to deploy that technique, which has been very good for us on all the projects that we've implemented, including ones at RFK and the Whitestone Bridge. So we will be using a reversible lane, a movable barrier which facilitates a reversible lane, and that really is the key traffic management technique that we've incorporated right from the beginning of the project. Another improvement that we can benefit from in this project, unlike previous projects, is that the toll plaza project that I talked about will result in the creation of a new two-lane ramp that goes directly from the Staten Island Expressway onto the lower level of the bridge. Those of you that use the bridge know that it's somewhat difficult, or is certainly more difficult, to access the lower level of the bridge from the Staten Island Expressway. Traffic has a tendency to go directly to the upper level. By building this direct connection ramp from the expressway to the lower level, we believe we will see a better balance of the traffic between the upper and the lower, and that will take a lot of the pressure off the upper level during the period of this construction. The second last bullet there refers to something we've been working with our regional partners on quite a bit. State DOT, we are very closely aligned with them in all these projects. In fact, the toll plaza project that we're doing at on the Staten Island side is part of a memo of understanding that we have with the State Department of Transportation, where we do basically a series of very synchronized ramp improvements that were designed by a single designer, so they all fit together seamlessly. What we did is we were very much aware there's a lot of construction in this corridor, so one of the concerns is what the cumulative impacts of all this construction along the corridor would be. So we did is we implemented a very sophisticated traffic model jointly with the State Department of Transportation that modeled the whole I-278 corridor, and then we reflected the impact of all of these various projects, including the concurrent periods of construction. And by doing that, we were able to gauge, to some extent, the cumulative impacts. The cumulative impacts are really, since no lanes are being taken out of service in peak periods, the cumulative impacts are more the turbulence that the traffic will experience as it navigates its way through narrower lanes, or your maintenance of traffic devices along the way. And we established that the overall delay was of the order of just several minutes, which was basically a good finding, because obviously we wanted to make sure that the cumulative impact of all the construction was tolerable to the general public. And obviously a lot of regional coordination, particularly with State Department of Transportation, but also within the MTA family with bus operations on the design of the bus access to the upper level and the whole configuration to facilitate bus access to the bridge. A lot of effort went into that as part of the project. Next slide, please. We mentioned at the outset also the utilities were all relocated out of the way of the redecking ahead of time, and by doing that we eliminated another variable from the construction that this current contractor will not have to worry about, thereby taking some risk out. Mentioned the full-scale prototype at Lehigh University. We were able to glean some valuable constructability lessons from implementing that, which we think has benefited the project. And obviously, Bridges and Tunnels has implemented orthotropic deck projects on other facilities, particularly the Whitestone and the RFK. And over the years, we've assimilated a lot of knowledge about the kinds of issues that can lead to risk, fabrication risk, performance, and construction risk. And we tried to, as best we can, assimilate all these lessons into this very large project. And probably one of the other major lessons that we learned from implementing large projects of this nature that have extensive implications is the need for a very proactive outreach to the affected communities, to the elected officials, to the community boards, and to all the public stakeholders that exist on both sides of the bridge. So that effort has started, and it will ramp up quite a bit as we get closer to awarding the construction contract, and we know more about the specific details of the contractor's schedule.
What's the wearing system?
It's going to be a rubberized asphalt material called Rosphalt, actually, is the trade name. No, actually, we apply a waterproofing membrane on top of the steel deck, and that provides a measure of protection to the steel, and it also helps with the bonding because, as you probably know, bonding to a steel plate is difficult, to say the least. And this is a method that's been extensively evaluated and tested. In fact, we're using it right now on the Throgsneck Bridge very successfully. This graphic shows the traffic management measure that will be in place during construction. On the upper diagram is a cross-section of the bridge showing in the morning peak direction, eastbound, headed towards Brooklyn. You have 2 lanes on the normal normal side there. You have the yellow area is the contractor work zone, which is about 18 foot 10 inch wide, and then you have another eastbound lane sort of on the other side of that work zone, which we commonly refer to as a cattle chute, and then you have 2 lanes going westbound on the upper level, and of course you still have the 6 normal lanes on the lower level. And the mirror image occurs on the in the PM peak going in the westbound towards Staten Island direction. So basically you can see from this that at all times there are 6 lanes, as there are now, operating in the peak direction. And by using this movable barrier, we're able to give the contractor enough of a work zone that he can be pretty productive, but yet provide enough lanes that we can operate the facility without an undue impact to the general public.
So as the phases continue,
This
it gets shifted
it
to one
moves-
side or the
exa-
other, but maintaining the same number of
Exactly,
lanes.
exactly. The work zone moves across the area, but at all times this general arrangement will prevail. So that
Plan to have signs warning motorists, if possible, use the lower level because of construction, or you're not going to?
we will have our normal complement of variable message signs, advanced construction signs. We'll be working closely with Transcom and our partners in State DOT for all of that. That's
The new website for bridges and tunnels as well, the app. Someone will be able to tell because the Verrazano is the only one of the bridges that has an upper and lower app, so you can look and see which
right.
one makes the most sense.
Now, Andrew, the app we just released, so prior to traveling and during traveling, the passenger can advise the motorist. In addition, there are VMS signs that will be posting the travel speeds and times from lower to upper level, so a decision could be made based on that information. So, yes, we will have as much information trying to be transferred to the motorist as possible during the construction.
You'll have signs on both the Staten Island Expressway and the Gowanus. Warning people.
yes.
Right.
Good question. Within this scenario, the work area, how long will it take to finish that work area, either going from Brooklyn to Staten Island or S side of Brooklyn, that area, before you move the yellow over to the next? What's the period
Well,
of time?
it's basically there are 4 construction stages, and they're each about the same amount of work. So as you see on the top, we have 36 months of roadway construction. So it's roughly a 9-month stage. Roughly speaking, 9 months.
Alan, please don't have a heart attack. What if we shut it down, the whole thing, the whole upper all at once? How long would that take?
We looked
It's
at
a fast way to get me killed. I know.
we looked at that sort of just for kicks, and
Right. That's,
We
it gives extremes, but that's fine.
we believe we could. I mean, this 36 months of roadway construction. However, overall the contract is a 5-year contract because there's a lot of prep work that has to be done and some work after the roadway work gets completed. We believe we could take the 5 years down to somewhere between 2.5 and 3 years. The cost savings, mainly I think because you still have to fabricate all the steel, and a lot of the costs are fixed no matter how you implement the project. The cost would go down, we think, somewhere in the order of 40 to 50 million. Now that's construction costs. If you add in soft costs, it might be a bit more, maybe 50 to 60.
Is the plan to work in only daylight hours or also daytime and nighttime?
This pretty much is a 24/7 operation. What you see here is the daytime. I should have mentioned that. You see the daytime configuration. What happens at night is, because the traffic demands are less, the contractor will widen out his work zone by taking an additional, usually an adjacent lane, and that lane is used to feed the job, so to speak, so that the flatbeds delivering material will come in at night, they will drop stuff off, they'll take advantage of the ability to close more lanes at night. Obviously, we also have to work with some other considerations like noise restrictions and so on. So it's a balancing act between all of those considerations.
You just mentioned the work and the materials being delivered. Do you know where the majority of those are going to be coming from? Is it from the Brooklyn side of the bridge or the Staten Island side of the bridge?
That's an interesting question. Previous orthotropic deck projects, because the panels are very large and shipping them over the highways requires special permits and so forth, the logistics of actually getting the panels to the work site are quite involved. And that's one of the major issues where we'll see, the contractor's ingenuity in coming up with a good logistics plan for getting the material to the site. Yeah, I mean, I believe the Whitestone Bridge, the panels came to the port in Brooklyn, and they were then tractor trailers would then pick up the flatbeds and drive them right onto the bridge. This contractor may, he may put in a temporary dock or something. There's all kinds of possibilities.
So the majority, in your guesstimate, the majority of the materials would come from the Brooklyn side of the bridge, either by marine traffic or by truck.
If he puts in a temporary, say, dock facility where he's shipping it directly, it might be on the Staten Island side.
It depends on who the bidders,
Yeah.
who they come in, and who they're going to
Who
work
the suppliers
with,
are.
who the suppliers are, and all that.
Yeah. So that. Okay, next slide, please. This just give you an idea of what's in the project itself. We're replacing the original concrete deck, new drainage system. By doing this project, we will enhance the seismic, wind, and performance with heavy loads off the deck itself and indeed off the overall bridge structure. We'll be implementing new signs, and we'll continue our phasing in of LED roadway lighting, which is something we've been doing as an ongoing, I would say, green initiative that makes a lot of sense from an energy efficiency point of view.
Because you have this slide up, and you're mentioning wind, and we know that there's a lot of heavy winds on the bridge. Is there a threshold beyond which you will not allow the work to happen with certain wind speeds?
Yeah, we have, we work with the operations department. We have sort of standard operating protocols for wind. I mean, I'd say based on recent experience at 60 miles an hour, there'll be no operation whatsoever going on across the bridges. But even before that, there's a phase 1 and a phase 2, and there's escalating levels by which certain operations get restricted depending on wind speed.
Sustained winds of 60 miles an hour shut down the BZ today.
Oh, they do.
Right.
That's with no construction.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
It just becomes, for tractor trailers in particular, it just becomes
It's
too
not for the
dangerous
bridge's
to.
sake, it's for the ability to, for the driver who can't control the car.
Okay, so with all that intro to the actual quantitative risk assessment results, basically this graphic shows the results of the analysis. The 345.1 million zero risk, that's basically the expected value of the total project cost. It's probably the best way I could describe it. And the number that corresponds to the 80th percentile, that's the value at which we have an 80% confidence level that the project cost will not exceed that value. So you can see that between 345 and 381, there's about a $36 million delta, and that we can attribute that to the various risk factors that were evaluated and quantified in this risk analysis. So if we move to the next slide, you see at the top the $36 million that I mentioned is the unmitigated risk that we need to address. And what we did is we broke down the risk into really four categories. The three predominant risks are at the top, and then we aggregated all the other minor risks into a miscellaneous category at the bottom. So starting at the top, the biggest risk, as you can imagine, on a job that's almost all steel construction is volatility in the price of steel. So we attributed a $16 million unmitigated risk to that issue. The way we mitigated that is, which is common to a lot of transportation agencies, including State Department of Transportation, is to put in a material price escalation clause whereby certain movement in the price of steel, we would make an adjustment to the contract pricing, either up or down, so that, for example, if it moved down, the authority would benefit from that, and that's actually happened to us on several occasions when we've used this. Or if it moved up markedly, the contractor's exposure to that would be somewhat limited by this clause. So we believe that this has reduced the effect of this risk by about $10 million, reducing it from 16 to 6. The next issue we had here was performance of the deck overlay system. Orthotropic decks have had some history of performance issues with overlays, wearing surfaces. Throughout the design, we were evaluating a lot of different methods and materials to use. So at the time this risk assessment was conducted, there was a certain amount of risk associated to how this issue would eventually fall out. Since then, we believe we have resolved that issue very satisfactorily. We've come up with a product that I described earlier, which is a spray-on waterproofing system with a rubberized asphalt applied on top. It's a system that's been tried and tested, so to speak, and we believe that by implementing this system, we've taken a lot of that risk away, reducing it, we think, by about $5 million. A project, like a lot of construction projects, I'm getting to the third risk area, seasonal windows are important. What I mean by that is, for example, waterproofing material sometimes requires 40 degrees or 50 degrees in rising before it can be applied. And those kind of temperature limitations sometimes effectively provide a sort of a window. And if you fail to get the work in before the ambient temperatures fall below those levels, you may get kicked into the following spring season, and that can have a pretty dramatic effect on your schedule. So what this third bullet refers to is the aggregate effect of missing seasonal windows, so that that was perceived to be a pretty large risk. The way we've mitigated that risk somewhat is we've implemented a contractor incentive disincentive clause, which is typical for large roadway projects of this type. And working very closely with our operations people at the Verrazano Bridge, we were able to by looking very closely at the traffic numbers, we were able to increase the contractor's work hours by about an hour a day, and that had a dramatic effect, as you can imagine, on the contractor's productivity per day and his overall cost. And we think collectively these measures have reduced something of the order of $4 to $5 million of risk, and that may be, looking at it now, that may be an underestimate. It may have more of an effect than that, to be honest. And then other categories, we made similar adjustments. There are too many to list, but miscellaneous other measures that we implemented, we believe have also taken some risk out of the project. So overall, of that $36 million unmitigated risk, we believe we've mitigated about $24 million off that 36, and that's it may be better than that, but we didn't want to be too claim too much, so it may be somewhere between 24 and 36 has been mitigated, and by doing so, if we add that 24, say that remaining 12 million that's not mitigated to the 345 million zero risk, we fall well below the project budget, which really was the goal, to get your 80th percentile value under the project budget. So by doing all these mitigations, we essentially get to where we need to be cost-wise. Next slide. Yes, sir.
The first one is the barrier that you have that moves. It would allow a car to drift into the bus lane or a truck to drift into the bus lane going in the same direction and occupy. Why would you not have permanent barriers to make sure that cars cannot get in and out, and then you won't have to move it?
It's
Creating a chute like that is state law. If we follow the rules of the State Department of Transportation, if you have a chute like that where someone can't go in or out, it causes a security problem, a risk problem for the driver, for both the bus driver and for the car driver, so that you can be able to have that flexibility to move from one to the other. Same as they have like the HOV lanes on the Long Island Expressway or the Gowanus.
All right. Second question.
But because of the chute, you'll actually have concrete barriers.
Not on both sides of it.
Will you
Only
not
one.
on both sides?
No.
Just on one side?
yeah.
Right. Right. So on the one side, but on the other side, if you go back on the other side, the contractor's area will be there.
Yeah.
During the construction period.
Yeah,
During the
During
construction,
that construction period, will you not have a concrete barrier?
on that side, yeah.
Yeah, you will. During the construction period, not through the permanency.
Right. But
Right.
what I'm saying, during the construction period.
You have to protect the
you'll have
workers.
concrete on both sides.
Right.
That was the point.
But you're not going to have an HOV at the same time.
Right, when you get to the issue, but the issue first is during the construction period, safety of the motorist going the opposite direction.
Right. I may have misunderstood the Chuck. You were
No, my
talking about the
question was
HOV?
really for the post-construction
Right, the
period.
HOV. No, there won't be a
Yeah.
chute. There'll be some flexibility to go in and out.
Second question is surety bond, completion bond. Can you use, I assume you're going to have surety bonds, and I assume you're going to
Yes.
have completion bonds. Can you use those in any way to help mitigate the risk even further? With a cap and then a bond?
Well, I mean, we have performance bond requirements. I assume that's what you're referring to. For the contractor has to have 100%. He's to be able to have 100% of the value of the contract performance bond, plus payment bonds separately and so forth.
In other words, part of your estimate of risk
Right.
is timeliness, for example, taking the seasonal windows. If you have a performance completion bond that says you have got to get the fellow in front of you who's doing the work immediately prior to whatever work you have to do in the middle, that they have to complete by a certain time, then you have a bonding capacity if they take too long to complete their end and thereby delay you and deny you the seasonal window.
But it's one contractor, so it's not one guy finishing and another guy beginning.
You have no subs?
Yeah,
For that one contractor.
there are subs.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. The sub who delays the next sub is where the problem occurs.
That's the general contractor's responsibility to manage all the subs. You know, we're not. This is not a Wick's Law type project. It's the general contractor has full responsibility of all the subs, and it's his responsibility to coordinate among the subs so that if one, I understand what you're saying. If one sub delays the other, we would go after the general contractor to remedy that situation, and we would hold them responsible for that.
Have a surety bond or performance or completion bond is scaled to ensuring that any damages missing all or part of the seasonal window would be covered by that bond.
There's the bond and liquidated damages.
Well, in addition to the bond, there are very hefty liquidated damages and disincentives for missing the early completion milestones that we're hoping to achieve. So we believe that those are very powerful financial incentives for the general contractor to make sure that all his subcontractors basically are aligned to meet the project goals. Well, we have standard performance bonds in our contracts. You know that they've generally worked very well for the kind of work that we do. I think the schedule here that we're asking the contractor to meet, I think the kinds of high-powered contractors or joint ventures that will pursue this job will be very motivated to meet this schedule or even beat the schedule by quite a bit. So I hear what you're saying, but I think that it's the kind of a project that of anything that the chances are more that the schedule will be surpassed. Sure.
And then, your experience on other bridge projects.
Well, we've I'd be happy to discuss it. We have executed a lot of these orthotropic deck projects, and the schedule performance has been very, very good. Has in most cases bettered the original contract schedule. So there are no guarantees. Of course, it's construction, but I think the structure of the contract is such that we're reasonably confident of having a successful outcome. Okay. And then the last part of the risk assessment is the schedule assessment, and that basically similarly shows a 13-month delta between the expected completion and the 80th percentile value completion. So we go to the next slide. Very similar issues. The main issue that, as you can imagine, would drive the schedule to be late would be missing these seasonal windows, which can have a dramatic effect. And the mitigations are, as I had previously described, for the cost issue. The increased access to the site and the incentives are really very, very powerful tools in managing the schedule. And then we have an aggregate category there of various other impacts. Overall, we were able to reduce the predicted unmitigated schedule duration down to only a 3-month unmitigated amount. So next slide. So in conclusion, we've conducted the risk assessment, we were able to mitigate the unmitigated risks quite substantially for both cost and schedule. We were able to bring the 80th percentile value of the cost to well within the available budget. Next step is to receive bids. Bids are actually due on this project at the end of the month. We will apply this risk assessment technique to evaluate what the appropriate project contingency should be to carry into the project. We'll obviously evaluate bid results, contractor qualifications, do all our due diligence on that, and hopefully award the contract sometime later this year, depending on how that process moves along. And then we will follow through on this risk management method as a tool to manage exposures and risks throughout the construction period.
So if you award it later this year, would construction begin in 13, likely?
We anticipate there'll probably be about a year of shop drawings, measurements, surveys, some preparatory work. Probably it'll be 2014 before you see significant work on the roadway for this project, which kind of works very well with our other project on the toll plaza. So it's carefully choreographed that way, actually. So.
Alan, question. Do you recall what happened last time there was any work on the Verrazano as well as mostly on the expressway for the community to understand what's going on here in the communications effort?
Yeah, well, I know Bridges and Tunnels has been involved in an extensive
Joyce Mullaney of Bridges and Tunnels has been very involved with the community in keeping them abreast of both the phases leading up to this project, which have included the state DOT, Staten Island Expressway, as well as the, first the removal of the toll booths, the new entrances to the bridge on the Staten Island side, and this plan. So she's been keeping elected officials and community officials apprised of what's been going on a regular basis. So I did suggest that they do a sit-down with the advance editorial board just to give them a presentation of what to expect, so they're not caught napping over there. But I think most of the elected officials should know what's going on and will be communicated with regularly as this goes forward.
Okay. Has there been any coordination with the bus company at all to determine how long the trips will be during construction, but more importantly, when all is said and done, how much expectation for how much faster the trip will be from SI over to Midtown?
Based on preliminary calculations, you're probably looking at a better than a 15-minute headway run with the Capitanano Boulevard buses, which are predominantly the buses that come. They don't come through the HOV lane in Staten Island.
Right.
The significant increase is going to come in the connection where they go off and on the Gowanus, and that is sort of uncalculated. Right now, buses mix on the upper level with existing traffic. So as we move along and the build-out continues on the Gowanus, we'll bring in some traffic people to do an analysis of that, and then work with Darrell to see. I think it's a project that will change the mobility in the region, but on our part, I think we have to do our due diligence with Bridges and Tunnels, working with buses to coordinate the headway and see just what the numbers will be at the end.
Okay.
So in regards to that, it's anticipated that only express buses will be able to use the HOV, the local buses that use the bridge won't?
I got to be honest with you. What happens with the bus runs there, the Bay Ridge buses use the lower level. I think it's
S79.
S79, and there may be two because they had a lot of people on those buses, but they usually use the lower level. They don't get involved with the upper level or the HOV lane. They come in through Father Capitanano Boulevard, stay to the right, get off at the first exit. Predominantly all the buses that come through are, yes, HOV heading into Manhattan.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to shave about 15 minutes off a commute. Yes. To just, the time going from one side of the bridge to the other, I mean, they'll just zip across the bridge and they'll be in lower Manhattan literally, 10 minutes from the beginning of the bridge.
Yeah.
Great.
The predominant problem we've always had was the turbulence from upper and lower level with a lot of the buses coming in from Father Capodanno and crisscrossing after the toll plaza. In this project, that is going to be alleviated with ramps. So they have a clear run onto the bridge, which is a couple of minutes over the bridge onto the HOV lane on the Gowanus. So we anticipate significant decreases in time.
Well, that'll actually be a significant decrease from a private automobile single driver. I mean, so there'll be great incentive to perhaps use carpooling or the buses.
Chuck?
Oh, Jesus.
Please.
No, there is no bicycle lane in this current program, no.
Nor is there a parachute jump. Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. Great job. Thank you very, very much. Hillary, the capital program status that's included in the book?
Page 3.1 is the commitments and completions. If there are any questions. Hearing none.
Hearing none?
Is the construction of this being done by capital construction?
It is not. Bridges and tunnels. And they're, they've done the Triborough and the Throgs Neck and Whitestone right now. Or vice versa, sorry. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you. Is the security meeting, it's an executive session meeting?